Okay, Ina, thanks for coming on the podcast. Before we get started, let me just say for anybody listening, if you're listening on one of the platforms where you can leave us a review, please leave us a 5-star review. If you're watching the video on YouTube, be sure to hit the subscribe button and like the video so we can keep putting out good content, sharing the knowledge that people bring to the podcast, including our guest today, Ina Bakalova, right? Is that how you pronounce your last name?
Almost.
Okay.
Bakalova.
Okay. And I want to say it is Ina. Some people, at least in the States, pronounce it Ina. And you told me it's not. It's like Gina without the G, right?
Yeah.
We'll
so
get that
easy
straight.
To remember.
People, yeah, okay. And I appreciate coming on. I know we met recently, I think through a publicist or a PR person who works for you. And I'm interested to share your story and to get into some of the things that you're teaching business owners to do through e-commerce and on all the kind of stuff that you're doing. So why don't we go back though? And I mean, you're very young, but let's start with where you started, where you grew up. I can tell from your accent, you're from Brooklyn. So
Brooklyn,
New York. Isn't that what you sound like?
No.
And you can tell us all that stuff and you know, where you grew up and how you ended up where you are and what you're doing.
Yeah, of course. So I'm British, by the way.
If anybody can't pick that up, we got a problem.
I don't know what a Brooklyn accent sounds like, but I'm pretty sure it doesn't sound like mine.
No, definitely not.
No, so I mean, yeah, you say I'm young, but I'm actually not that young. I feel like I've had a bit of a convoluted journey to where I am today, but it's exactly where I want to be. So I graduated about 5 years ago now, and I always wanted to have my own business. I didn't know what that would be. I had no idea that it would be like an online business at all.
Right.
And I started several ventures after university. I had a job for a year, which was surprising because I'm surprised it lasted that long.
It was that bad?
No, so it was a sales role, and it was very entrepreneurial, which is why I think it lasted so long. But after working for myself now for quite a while, I realized that I'm just the worst employee. Like a
lot of entrepreneurs are like that, right? You just have trouble working for people.
Yeah. And it's like this, it's so weird. It's like this thing inside you, like, I don't want to do as I'm told. I have to do it my way. It's right.
But probably being in sales early on is good experience. A lot of people shy away from sales. They're uncomfortable about it. You know, the whole salesman idea. So probably getting that out of the way when you're young and just starting is probably a good thing for people, right?
Yeah, definitely. So in the UK, I don't know if it's the same in the States, but sales is kind of looked down on. It's not a very
same as here,
yeah, it's not a very prestigious career. But I just I got to work for a fast growing tech company, so that was really interesting. But also I just was not prepared for how useful sales would be for what I do today, because when you're starting your own business, you have to be a salesperson.
Yeah, you're promoting and selling everything that you're putting out there.
Exactly. And you know, at the beginning, you know, you'll struggle to even sell your stuff for free, probably, because you're not that good, but you get better at it. And I just think me working in sales was just such a good call, even though I didn't know it at the time. So now when I speak to younger people about, you know, they're wanting to go and get a job before they start their own business, I would 100% recommend going for like a customer facing or sales role, because you're going to have to do that when you set up on your own.
Right. So get it while you're young.
Yeah. And yeah, I started a few other businesses. Like I had a food product business, which I'm happy to talk about the learnings from that, but that didn't work out. And then I sort of fell into online consulting and helping property or real estate developers to attract investors and clients on social media. So it was very niche, but because I was so niche, that allowed me to grow my audience quicker, to get so many more clients than I would have if I was like a generalist. And that's really how I fell into helping other people start an online consulting business.
All right, well, let's go back to how you fell into it. So your first business, you said, was a food products business. What were you doing, and how did you end up? You're working for a tech company doing sales, so you're like, oh, that's a good idea. Let me go do food products. That where'd that come from, and what was it?
Yeah, so always knew I wanted to do like start my own business. And I was at this company. I'd also bought my first investment property at the time.
Okay.
And I was like, look, I've got some sort of buffer, I've got money coming in every month. I can afford to start a business. What I really didn't think about is just how much capital you need to start a product-based business.
Right.
Like it was a really valuable lesson, but I didn't need to learn it
Right.
like that. But yeah,
you were creating your own product, or you were selling other people's?
I was manufacturing it and
that's
selling
expensive.
it. Yeah. So I was making sales, but I was literally just paying my suppliers.
Right. You were breaking even, no profit.
Yeah. And what I actually realized is in that industry, you either need to raise a load of money or you have some sort of financial backing behind you to make it happen.
Yeah, to deal with it until you really get going.
Yes, and the margins are also so slim. So
huge volume. Right.
You can't really bootstrap it. You have to just.
What was the product?
So I'm Bulgarian, and it's like a Bulgarian spread that's like very well known there. It's made out of roasted peppers and aubergines.
Okay.
It's kind of like Bulgaria's ketchup. That's how I describe it.
Okay.
And yeah, all of my friends absolutely loved it whenever they had it around my house. And they were always asking me for it. So I just started making it, and I just like rebranded it for the English market.
So it was like a family recipe, but they didn't really sell this type of, let's say it was a condiment, right? Because it's like ketchup or mustard or whatever. So they didn't sell it in UK?
No, there were a few shops that did sell it, but it just wasn't as good as the real thing. So yeah, that was it. And it took off, but it ultimately I went bankrupt because
you had to create the product and find somebody who can make it in bulk volume, right? And then package it and then put it in jars. And then, I mean, it's a long road to getting to market. And like you said, it's a very, one thing's off in the whole supply chain, price wise, you could like lose your shirt. It's very complicated, especially for a first business. It's a complicated thing. So
definitely. And just the biggest thing I underestimated was how to have any sort of business, you need to sustain yourself. Like you need to take home some sort of salary. And if you're not doing that, then it's just not sustainable. I know it's really straightforward, but we kind of just forget about the fact that we also need an income. So yeah.
Did you write a business plan for that business?
I did, yes.
But you didn't put yourself in there as like salary or staff or labor or anything? No.
Well, no, I thought I had enough income from my
right. So you don't need to pay yourself.
Yeah, which was so.
And I think people make that mistake, and then they're stuck with this business that seems to be making money, but they're not getting any money out of it. So at the end of the day, they're losing money because they're putting in all their labor, which does count for something.
Yeah.
You're giving that up, right? So yeah.
Yeah,
good lesson though.
Yeah, you create an expensive hobby essentially.
Right, exactly. Well, I always tell people, if you're the employee and you're not getting paid and you own the business, you're really just an employee of a business you just happen to own. You're not really the business owner, because then you'd have people working for you and doing all that kind of stuff. But I'm sure though that learning the whole, going through that experience of manufacturing and maybe co-packing and learning about labeling and all probably was a good experience, right? Valuable experience.
As I say, probably didn't need to learn it the hard way. But I am that kind of person that I have to kind of do something to really learn. But yeah, it was invaluable because I started everything from scratch. I had to get like you have to get the
raw ingredients, right? And everything.
Yeah, you have to source things, you have to look at suppliers, working with them, and negotiating contracts and stuff. It was very useful, but that is why I love helping people to start an online consulting business, because it's profitable from the start, and you'll have enough margins to actually grow. So I think it's good that I've had experience of kind of both sides, and that's why I recommend online consulting as the thing if you want to start as an entrepreneur.
Okay, so how did you use the word fall into, right? How did you fall into doing all the online stuff, social media, all that type of stuff. How did that come about?
Yeah, so
Falling into.
yeah, so it's when you look back at your journey, it usually makes sense, but at the time it doesn't. So
Okay.
but I had a lot of, my network was mainly in property. So I was doing a lot of networking, looking to buy some more property investments.
Like multifamily homes and things like that, or office building. What were you buying?
So I don't know what they're called.
Like residential.
Residential, yes. So we call them multi-lets. Essentially,
the same thing. Multifamily, we call it here. It's the same thing. So you might have a house with maybe 3 or 4 units in it, right?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
But we in the UK we sort of rent them out by the room.
Oh, yeah. They don't allow, most towns don't allow you to do by the room in the United States. Yeah.
We don't have enough space over here, so
right. Yeah. Right.
and yeah, anyway, I was very lost, and I was looking at how to grow and how to get more investments.
Yeah.
And my network just started. I wanted to learn more about property investing. So I thought, okay, if I, what can I exchange? Like, what skill can I exchange in order to learn more about these businesses? And I realized that I was really good at copywriting and at social media.
Okay. Just from your own doing it and playing around?
Yeah. And like studying it. Like I love reading about, sales and marketing psychology. And I was just kind of like applying that to my own social media.
Yeah.
And these property companies started asking me, okay, can you do our social media? Can you do our marketing?
Just to promote, to get tenants for them?
No, so to get to build their brand, but also to attract investors.
Okay.
So the developers will, they'll need investment in order to scale their business.
Right. Sure.
So yeah,
you had one property at the time, right?
Yeah.
So when they rent out a room, what do they do? It's shared kitchen? You share?
Yes. Yeah.
It's like, okay, good. So you had one, and then you figured.
No, sorry, I had 2 by that point.
Okay. You're a mogul
at
that point.
No, not quite. But I was like sustaining myself by this point. And so I just started doing that for several clients. And in doing that, I realized I love marketing. I don't actually want to learn more about property. It's not the business for me. Again, it's a very development. It's a very capital intensive business.
Yep.
You like invest money, and then it has, it's there for 2-3 years. And if you don't sell that development, then it's just
a lot
locked
of risk.
in it.
Yeah.
It is a lot of risk.
Yeah.
It's very incremental. It's not that creative for me anyway. But yeah, I just fell upon, social media and online marketing, and just realized I loved it and I was good at it. And it sort of grew from there.
Okay. So you started picking up clients, and you were basically consulting with them, but you were also writing their copy, posting, right? Isn't that what you do for your clients?
At the very beginning, that's what I was doing. And I quickly moved away from that because for lots of reasons, but I essentially realized that they would get better results if I taught them how to do it.
Okay.
And gave them the resources for them either to hire someone or do it themselves. I realized that I could have a bigger impact if I was more of a consultant as opposed to actually executing on it.
Yeah. So you weren't responsible for doing their stuff every month. You would come in and say, okay, here's the problem. This is how we fix it. You'll introduce them to somebody, or maybe they already had somebody, or help them hire somebody, and then deal with them on a monthly basis. Now, does that make it a shorter term relationship? Like after working with you for 6 or 8 months, now they're good and they only maybe interact with you once a year just to check in, or is it a monthly consulting?
Yes. So it is a much shorter term thing. Like typically I would work with clients for about 3 months and just like turn around their social media.
Yeah.
And that's like 3 months is just what worked for my particular client. For some people, it might take longer or shorter. So yeah, so at that point I had to start building my audience, because obviously to sustain that, you need more volume.
Yeah, because you have turnover, right?
Exactly. So, and then I started building my audience.
So you started doing your own social media and your own building of your brand.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what were you, I know we're jumping ahead a little bit, but what are the things that you were finding with and this is specifically to real estate, and we're going to get into niche marketing, I think, a little bit, because it's important. I think people totally miss the advantage of that. What kind of things did you see them doing wrong or maybe not doing it all in when you would find these clients that needed you?
So I love this question because with a lot of my current clients, they don't see just how much value they add, right? They were doing so many things wrong with their social media. Like they were just, all the stuff that came naturally to me, they just had no idea. And I think seeing that made me realize this, how much I knew.
Right. It was valuable what you knew.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's actually quite hard to step back and like look at your own skills, stuff that comes so easy to you. You just think it's the same for everyone, but it's just not the case.
Right.
No. So they were just, it was the same things. Like they were being very corporate in their marketing.
It's like a messaging issue, right? They're not communicating clearly and simply what they do and who they're looking to communicate with and work with and bring in as an investor. A lot of people do that. Lawyers are notorious for talking like complicated, I don't know, make themselves feel better. Like they're smart and they got to prove to everybody that they're smart, and then nobody knows what to talk. Even when I try and simplify it, I'll bring a friend on and say, hey, read this on a web page, and what do you think? And they're like, I have no idea what this means. Now, to me, it seems simple, but and people get lost in their own, what is it, like jargon and the terms of their industry and especially real estate and development.
Exactly. It sounds very similar to law. It's got lots of jargon, lots of, I guess, technical knowledge, but the average person doesn't know anything of that. So I always did the test actually when I was a copywriter. When I was doing copywriting for clients, I'd write out like their webpage and literally show it to a randomer in a cafe and be like, do you understand what this company does?
Yeah, that's a good way to do it, right?
Yeah. So I always do that with all of like new marketing now, is just people have got to understand it in like 10 seconds or
because they'll move on, they'll glaze over, they're so inundated with information. If they don't understand your stuff, simply they're gone.
Exactly. So I imagine they were doing a lot of things that most business owners do online with their marketing, and that's like not clearly getting their message across, not articulating their value, not grabbing attention. There's so much to it, right? And I was just kind of fixing all of that.
Okay, well, I also want to get into what you mentioned before about niche marketing, because I think a lot of people think, if I really target what I do and I whittle it down to, investment people or construction, construction people in the multifamily market, really specific, that it will somehow limit their business. And it always is the opposite. It actually increases their business because they know how to target, they find the people, they know the message, and they don't get lost trying to communicate with everybody and everything about what they can do everything. I mean, I could do a lot of things as a lawyer, but I don't go tell everybody all of it. If somebody refers it to me, I'll tell them whether I can do it or not, but I don't necessarily have it on my website, and I don't necessarily market towards it, because if you're everything to everybody, you're really nobody. You're nothing to nobody. That sounds a little not very well.
So
said,
what would
you know what I mean?
What would you say your niche is in law?
Yeah, I work with small business owners, entrepreneurs, and family-owned businesses.
Perfect.
Now I do estate planning and wills and trusts, and I do commercial real estate, and I do residential real estate, and I do business work. But my focus is just on that marketplace, and I do all those things for those people. So it doesn't mean that I don't get referred to other people through other things, but I don't really hold myself out, specifically outside of those verticals, because it's just it's too much. I can't be everything to everybody.
No, that's exactly what I do. Like on the front end, you are niche, and then, you might pick up clients from other people that aren't in your niche, but that's with the marketing, you have to be so targeted.
Right.
When you're starting out, I think obviously over time, like say you're growing an audience, you can afford to go broader, but
slowly but surely.
Yeah.
Because if you do a good job for your client who's in construction, and they have a friend who's got a business that's not necessarily construction, and they love what you do, they're not going to say, well, I'd refer you to Ina, but she only works in the construction business. Like they don't even have that. I get referred things for law. I'm like, why did that person even think? Well, because they know that I'm a good person and I take care of clients, and they didn't even think whether I could handle I don't know if you have lemon law. I hooked up with somebody who's got a lemon law claim, and I've done several of these things.
A lemon law.
Lemon law. There are laws in the United States. It varies state to state, where if your automobile experiences problems within the first 2 years, the same problem over a period of time, it's considered to be what's called a lemon, meaning it goes back to the dealership. They give you all of your money back and you start over. And there's a whole system of filing these claims with the manufacturers when you qualify and so forth. And I do that for clients, but it's nowhere on my website because it's not something that I want to market for. But because I work with other people and because they know that I'm good at solving problems and taking care of them, they just said, well, I would call Mitch. If he can't do it, he'll find you somebody who could. And, I'm helping them. So I think, if you're good at what you do and you're good in that marketplace, other things will come. You just don't have to feel like you got to tell everybody.
Exactly. I always tell clients about niching down because I find it's always a sticking point when we're starting. The resistance towards niching down is a lot.
Because you feel like you're giving up something or you're passing up opportunities. It's not true.
Yeah, it's and I always try and explain it like, if you don't niche down, you're barely going to have any leads. As soon as you niche down, you're going to have niche specific leads and those more general leads that you wouldn't have attracted otherwise if you were more general in your marketing.
Yeah. If not, people don't think of you, and you can't reach that marketplace and say, hey, this is why you should work with me, because I'm an expert in, well, we can't use expert as lawyers, but maybe you can. I concentrate on, or I have a large clientele in the restaurant industry, in the automobile industry. And, they want to know that you, as their marketing person, understand their business. So if you're everything to everybody, they don't get that. And you're right. It totally goes the opposite. And other leads end up coming in because you're doing a good job and you expand into other, marketplaces. It's a huge problem with entrepreneurs. They don't get it. Yeah. I mean, it's like opening a store up, and a clothing store, and just having clothes for everybody. You could be Target. It's a little hard, but
Yeah. And the other thing with niching down is that you can then have premium pricing. You can charge more.
Can demand, right.
Exactly. Even if you are, essentially doing the same thing, right? You're not doing anything different. You're just the go-to person.
But it's a perception, right?
Yeah. It's about the perceived value, even if you're doing the same thing.
Right.
So yeah.
Because, ultimately, I think in most businesses, even as a consultant, right, you can't always compete on price. It's not possible. You will compete on price to the point where you are out of business or losing money and you don't even know it. You can't always give people breaks. You have to say no to some people who come to you and say, listen, I know somebody will do this for, $100 an hour, and I charge $400 an hour. Well, that's great, but I can't do it for $100 an hour because I know that I will be losing money the moment we start talking, and a lot of people don't, they don't get that.
Yeah. So this is why why I help other people to launch essentially a high impact, high ticket consulting offer, because it removes you from that comparison.
Yeah.
It's like apples and pears. Like your prospective clients can't compare you because you're just in a league of your own. And when you're trying to be the most competitively priced, be the cheapest, it just becomes a race to the bottom.
Yeah.
Like, your clients are always going to go with the cheaper option.
Right. And then you're attracting more clients like that.
Yeah. You're attracting more clients, and also
that expect price to be lower and lower and lower. And what deals can you make me? And it's a spiral. It's a bad road to be on.
Exactly. So I would always rather work with, 5 clients that are paying me higher ticket because they're just a different caliber of client. And for you, that's operationally fewer people to look after versus 30 clients that are paying you much less.
Yeah, they make you crazy.
Yeah.
You'll never sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's volume. I mean, you can't do volume as a consultant.
Exactly. And also I know it's a bit of a cliche in the online world, but what was the saying? I don't even know who made it up or who said it, but it's when people pay, they pay attention. And it's so true. Like, if you are helping with anything where the other person needs to be involved and they actually have to be part of the transaction, the transformation, then they need to have skin in the game.
Yeah.
And if they're paying more, then they are financially invested. They're also emotionally invested as well, and they're actually more likely to do their bit and to actually get a result that you're offering.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's loads of benefits to charging high ticket, I think, for both your business and for the client as well.
Right, because you don't want it to be more important to you than it is to the client. I mean, you're doing it to make money, but you're also doing it to benefit them. If they don't recognize that, go on to other people. Find somebody who will pay the fee to work with you to get the benefit that you bring to them.
Mm-hmm, exactly. Yeah. And also, when you charge high ticket, you then have more resources to really deliver for that client.
You do a better job.
Exactly.
Right. And then it reverses itself, because now you're doing a better job and you're getting referred to other people of the same caliber where you're charging money, and your rate. I always try and raise my rates a little bit every year and adjust things. And you don't want to be in the marketplace where, look, I know some attorneys, they're much older, maybe they're in their 70s and 80s. They're still charging like $250 an hour for work. I haven't charged $250 an hour for my work, and I don't do a lot of hourly work, but I haven't charged those rates in 15 years.
That's quite low, right?
Very low.
Yeah.
Most people in the business world are in the $400 range. If you're at a large firm, a corporate side, it could be $800 or $1,200 an hour. Now they're working for large corporations and doing work for them, but they also have a lot of more overhead than I do as a small, lawyer. But they never, I call them street lawyers. They were just like in a little community doing their work. They're a generalist, and they never really raised their rates. And now it's hard to go back to their clientele and say, oh, because of the cost of living and because the $250 an hour doesn't even pay gas in my car anymore, I need to charge you $450 an hour. Forget about it. You're not going to be able to do that. So you got to kind of, move your clientele up. And some people will fall off, right? The people that think you're too expensive or don't understand your value or aren't getting value from, or like you say, aren't engaged. So they're like, well, Ina doesn't really help me too much. Well, that's because you're not doing what she's asking you to do. They're better off going somewhere else. They won't give you a good review. And then you keep working your way up. Exactly.
The way I think of it is there's two ways that you can increase as a consultant your pricing and your revenue. And that's either, so you need to get more clients, right?
Yeah.
So you either decrease the price so you can get more clients.
Bad thing, right?
Yeah. Or increase the value and therefore increase the price.
Right.
So I would always rather increase the value, because then you can, and what you're offering.
Right.
Or the perceived value, because you don't necessarily have to change anything. It's
right.
Just
it's a perception. Sure.
Yeah. But yeah, and then you're just working with a completely different caliber of client. Yeah, there's a lot to say on like messaging and
yeah,
marketing. It's so interesting.
All right. So you were working with, so how long did you work with in the construction industry, in the real estate industry?
So that was for about a year.
Okay.
It wasn't a niche that I really wanted to serve. I had a few clients that were just business owners. They weren't in property. They were just, business owners, consultants. And I loved working with them. I just continued to work with property people because I had
paid the bills, right? You had the market.
Yes. And I was in a niche, and I was in this little London corner of like property investing, I was the go-to person for social media. So I just kind of rode that wave until about a year ago, when I just completely transitioned to working with consultants, because that's what I always wanted to do.
So you're basically a consultant that helps consultants.
Yeah, in a way.
Right?
In a way. I find it weird because there's so many, like, I don't even know if the term is consultant. I don't know what the term is, because some people have different terms that they use for what kind of I do.
Yeah.
And like in the online world, people are like experts, coaches.
Yeah. Advisors.
Advisors.
Yeah,
like
the whole thing.
It's hard to define it.
Yeah. But consultancy and consulting is a very broad umbrella, right? There's people consulting in every industry in the world. So are there industries that you work more with, that you've found that you are better working with a consultant who works in the food service business or who works in, whatever, versus others?
No, not specifically. I've had so many different clients, and I think that's why, like, I'm really good at creating the offer with them, and whatever niche they're in, just really creating a super strong offer that they can sell, that's going to provide value, that they can also sell high ticket. And I just think that's like my superpower, is just crafting that offer. And
So it's messaging, like getting their message really clear, really focused, really understandable.
Yes, and also
to the people they're trying to reach.
Correct. And also the structure of that, of the offer, like, not with what you're delivering, it has to be sustainable, and you have to be able to take on, several clients at once, and not be like really stressed out. So a lot of what we do involves really streamlining it and looking at where you can use like digital resources or things that automate things, and like create your own kind of documents and IP that you can then use, rather than exchanging your time every time you need to teach them something.
Right.
So yeah, it's a bit of messaging, but also the structure, and then like how you're going to sell it as well.
Right. That's an interesting comment, because I think sustainability is something that people don't really focus on. Even when I started the podcast 3 years ago, I realized very early on that if I didn't automate my process and streamline the way I design an episode, in terms of, I have some ads that are in there and some comments, and they're all pieces that I throw together every time, I would burn out and say, well, why am I doing this? This is too exhausting. And I've done the same thing with my practice too, because I don't start with, maybe clients think I do. I don't start with like a white piece of paper when you're like, you need a contract. That would be ridiculous. I've spent 30 years doing what I do, and I have clauses and things that I've used and contracts that I start with, and then modify them and change them from there based on whatever I'm doing. But I think that a lot of people, they don't see that. And like you said, look, if they start with you at the beginning, I guess that's great. Probably a lot of people don't. They get to you and they're already working and they need to be fixed and helped and they're exhausted or whatever, right? I think that that's one of the problems, is they dive in and they're like, well, what are you going to do when you get 50 customers? Well, that's a problem I want to have. That's not true. It sounds like it should be true, right? Because I can deal with those problems. I got too many customers. No, you can't. That's the same problem as not having any customers. It could really, ruins your whole experience and your quality of life and your income, and you're running around like a chicken with your head cut off, if that's an English expression, certainly an American expression.
Headless chicken.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that that's, you got a lot of good things to say. And I think that you get it when it comes to this stuff that a lot of people don't. And unfortunately, when they get it, if they haven't met you early enough, it may be too late. Like they may have burned out. They may have just said, what the heck, I'm going to work for somebody. I can't deal with this anymore. And then they find themselves unhappy a year later.
But I don't know if you find this, I feel like a lot of it is to do with our own mindset around money as business owners, because we make our prices and what we charge so personal.
Right.
And a lot of, again, clients I work with, they think that it's unfair to be charging what they should be charging.
Yeah, I know. I have the conversation with attorneys all the time. They're like, I can't raise my prices. My clients, I do this for them, but can they afford to pay that? I go, well, what about your family? What about your children? Should they be shorted because you're not charging at least the market rate for what you do, and therefore you need more clients and whatever? And then they say, you know what, you're right. And they raise their prices $25, $50 an hour, whatever, something that they can do. They can't do it too quick. Their whole life changes. And I think that a lot of people, I also think that people, like you were saying, they undervalue themselves. They're not comfortable saying, I'm worth that, until you push them out in the world and they do it. And then they realize, it changes the perception of their value. If your price is too low, people are going to be like, well, how much could you possibly know if you're only charging, $200 an hour?
Yeah.
Right. When the other guy's charging $450, maybe I should go with the $450 guy, because even though it's more money, he probably knows what he's doing. And that's another thing I think they overlook in the messaging, right?
So the good news about it is that you could be offering the same service, but just with a few tweaks.
Yeah.
You're not that stressed out, burnt out business owner anymore. You're literally doing the same thing. You're just packaging it in a different way, and you're making more money.
Right.
yeah, so it's just tweaks that you need to do. But also interesting what you said about the if someone's cheap versus expensive, it's like it's a psychological bias that we have.
Yeah.
I can't remember what the experiment, where it was, but there was literally an experiment where they gave two groups, they gave people the same, I can't remember if it was chocolate or something, it was some
the
sort
same exact product.
Yeah, same. It was food, exactly the same. It was just priced and packaged slightly differently. One was like super expensive, and the other one was really cheap. And their perceptions of how good that piece of chocolate was were so different.
Yeah.
Because they just thought, if this is so cheap, it can't be good.
Right. Of course, it's all your mind is telling you, well, this can't taste good.
Yeah, and then the kind of inverse of that is, well, if this is that expensive, then it must be good.
Yeah.
And like, that's just human like nature. We can't change that. That's how people think. So
oh, you probably could do that with wine. You probably could take 2 bottles of wine, tell them one is $150 and the other one's $15. And even if they're both very expensive, and they'll think the 150 is spectacular and the $15 bottle of wine is, like cheap grape juice. Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, there's always a lot to unpack, I find, with like around pricing and like bringing our own, I guess, emotional trauma to it as business owners.
Yeah, I think look, even as professionals, a lot of people undervalue what they do. They're uncomfortable about it. They're like, I don't think my clients will pay for that, and they'll all go away. And that's not true. I mean, look, there is a what's the word? An understanding of your marketplace, right? So if the going rate should be in the $400 to $500 range, you can't just start charging $800 thinking everybody's going to go to you unless you have some, accolades or some reason why people would do it. But, even in the world of mediation, a lot of attorneys get older and they mediate cases between people, right? Some of them charge $600 an hour. Some of them charge $300 an hour. Some of it's experience, but a lot of it's really just perception and how long you've been doing it. You've been moving your prices up, and and we always have this discussion because I think a lot of business owners, they don't get it when it comes to pricing and the psychology that goes with, especially on a consultancy level with customers, because you're not talking about cost of goods sold as a consultant, right? You're not there is no cost of goods sold really. It's just your time, a little bit of supplies, but not really. It's your advice. And what is that worth? So
yes, and just because it's intangible doesn't mean it's not worth anything.
Do you find it difficult when you're starting to work with somebody, to get them over that hump of raising their price and feeling comfortable with it and how they say it and all that kind of stuff?
Oh yeah, it's one of the first things we do is looking at how we create value, like what is value in your offer and how do we create it, and also just really unpacking everything around pricing and how they feel about what we're going to be charging. And because by the end of working with them, they have to feel confident asking for that amount of money, right? And they have to be fully sold. Like you're the first person, you're the first sale you need to make. You need to be so confident in what you're offering to be able to sell it. So that's like the first thing we do. And until we have that down, we don't move on, because you
ever give up on somebody? You ever say, listen, I don't think that we should work together because you're not really listening? Or
I haven't yet.
Okay,
that hasn't happened, but I imagine it probably will at some point. I think so. I have really good guarantees with what I do. Like I will, with most clients, I'll say if you are not happy at all with what we're doing in the first 30 days, I'll give you all your money back, no questions asked.
Right. That's good.
Yeah, regardless of how much time I've put into it.
Right.
And I just find and that's a guarantee that works for my business. There's like lots of different.
Right. But it shows confidence in what you do.
Exactly. And I just find that's really.
And do you find that you're refunding money all over the place? No.
So again, it's psychological, right? Obviously there's conditions to that. There's like, if you do this, this, and this, which is essentially like the basics of what I asked them to do. But it's psychological, because by the end of that month, even if they haven't got the result that they wanted yet, they they've worked with you for a month. So like they'll only ask for a refund if you literally did the worst job ever and they were completely kind of blameless in the situation and they did everything you told them. Most of the time that isn't the case. So, you know, I'd be surprised if anyone took me up on that refund, because by that point the trust is there and they can see that, you know, either I need to be better or they need to be better, or that they just need to continue to get that result.
I can see people giving up, not you giving up on them, but them giving up on themselves and saying, you know, just kind of, you know, not being willing to do what you're willing to do, and they leave. You wouldn't get rid of them, but they go on their way and they probably don't succeed, unfortunately.
Yeah, so I think that's like a really hard thing when you're supporting people through like big things like starting a business or growing it, because it's hard. So I just think as like the person helping them, you have to be really clever with how you structure that journey and give them kind of quick wins, because otherwise they're just going to give up. So I always try and, you know, give my clients, the way I've structured my kind of offer is that I'll have a few quick wins in the first like week of working together. That's just smart. To keep that momentum.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, I think there are people that I meet that shouldn't be in business for themselves. Like they just don't have the personality. They don't have the backbone, right? The do it yourself kind of thing. Now, maybe if they work with you, they have more of a fighting chance, but there are people that, you know, I mean, look, the economy is driven by not just entrepreneurs. There's people that work for other people. And sometimes, you know, they got laid off and they're like, okay, well, I should do this on my own, but they're really just not capable of doing it. They won't listen to you. They won't, you know, they don't have confidence enough to have the pricing and to you know, convey your message. You've taught them, but, you know, when they're in front of the customer, they're just not doing it. And I think that there's some people that hold on maybe too long.
Do you think?
Or maybe they just didn't meet people like you and they're, you know, they don't get it, because everybody kind of needs a coach, but a lot of people don't use coaches. You know, most people use a coach probably don't need coaches. They just think it's a good thing.
Yeah, that's interesting. Because I always hold my clients really high. I'm not like the one, you know, if someone thinks that they can do something, I would never be the person to say, no, you can't do that.
Of course not. Right. You're probably not meeting, me too, right? Probably not meeting the people.
No.
Really need, because of your marketing and because of who you're connecting with. You're finding the people that are saying, I want to do this and please help me and let's do it.
Exactly. It's people that, you know, they've made quite a big investment. So they, you know, you already have to be, I think, at a certain level to do that, to just spend that money.
Right.
And to kind of, it's all really dependent on you and how you do the work, essentially. So I already think if you're making that investment, you are generally already at a certain level.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you've built your business to do that, right? So you're getting people at a certain level and of a certain quality and willing to make the investment. You don't want to pick up somebody who's just getting started, doesn't have any money, has no confidence, and you can't even charge them or expect them to pay because they just don't have the money for your services. That's not the world in which you're working now.
Yeah. And I know some people will really, like, when they're selling, they will really kind of, if people have objections around money, they'll really kind of address them and walk people through it. And I'm just like, I'm not doing that, because if someone's, you know, not going to make this investment by themselves, then they're probably not a good fit, because I'm going to have to walk them through the fire every time we have to do something difficult.
They don't perceive the value.
Sorry?
They don't perceive the value versus what they're.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people
you got to resell it every time. It's just painful.
Yeah, and I think a lot of, you know, I remember the first, I can't remember how much it was, but it was a lot of money. The first kind of training I did, it was actually in property, because I had no idea. And if I didn't do it, I never would have bought my first property. But it was so much money and it was scary. But now I like invest in things all the time. All kinds
of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Because you see the value.
But the first time is scary.
Definitely is. Yeah.
But
well, that's the thing. Like, not everybody gets over that. Everybody takes the chance and says, you know what, I'm going to invest and find out. And
I do get that, because I don't know what you think, but there's so much crap on the
Oh,
internet.
it's just, yeah, it's hard to weed through. You do things, I have spent, and I've reviewed things for clients that have spent money on systems, getting rich in real estate, starting your own business, whatever it is. And a lot of it is, that doesn't mean that there's not some things in those packages that are valuable if you really go through them, and it helps some people. It always helps somebody, at least the guy in the commercial, right? And but that's the right. So, and they always interview the people that were successful with the system. They don't interview the 300 people that didn't make it. But there's always something to be learned. But the question is, what are you getting for, you're paying $3,000 or $4,000 for this system over a period of time, and there's 2 or 3 nuggets in there, and it's unfortunate, but they're selling too, right? They're trying to sell whatever it is they do to you. I'm not sure why they're teaching you how to get rich in real estate when they can just be rich themselves. But
yeah, it's a weird world, and I've definitely made wrong investments as well, and it's hard. My kind of lesson from that is just to really do your research. Don't make like emotional investments. Really look at it, kind of look at the person. If you can, look at their track record, although it's very hard to do that online, but really do your due diligence. And especially with like kind of, if you're investing like 10,000 or more to work with an expert, speak to their previous clients.
Right.
I think that's really important.
Yeah. I always tell people, if you're going to work with somebody, try and find a client that they worked with without being referred, because if you get references, they're going to refer you to people that had good experiences. They're not going to refer you to, talk to Ina. She hated working with us, and they're not going to do that. So it's hard to get through all that stuff and figure it out. We're bad at making decisions, fortunately.
Yeah. But at the same time, I think, if you're providing any sort of services, you also just have to accept the fact that there's going to be people that aren't happy. Like, you're going to disappoint people. And that's like another thing you have to navigate. Is, again, that's why you just have to be so sure in what you're doing, because if someone, you have one client that's having an amazing experience getting all the results, and then someone else that's saying this is rubbish, that can't make you question yourself. You just have to objectively see that not everyone is going to.
As long as you're doing your work and doing it right, and not everybody's gonna be happy, and that's okay. Look, I've gotten even reviews. I ask all clients when we close up a matter to review me or whatever on the different sites. I've gotten reviews from people that don't exist, like a bad review from somebody, and I look them up and I can't even determine that this person was ever a client of me or any attorney that worked for me or whatever. And you can't, and so you just got to keep pushing that down and ignore it. And it goes. I've gotten bad reviews from people that we went after for a client. So let's say you're owed money, and then you hired me to send a letter to say, hey, you'd have to pay Ina for, and then he puts a bad review of me. And then, but you got to bury those over time with better, reviews and better things that people have to say about, just part of doing business.
Yeah, I mean, with the people that were leaving bad reviews that didn't exist, that could be like a competitor trying to.
It could be, I guess.
You.
I can't imagine that attorneys are that vindictive, but it's possible.
You never know.
I'd send them an email like, please tell me, we'd like to remedy this. Who are you? What was your matter? I don't recognize your name. Don't hear from them. Or please take this down. Don't hear from them. And I think they're outdoing it to people. Maybe they don't like lawyers, so they're going to different websites and they're posting things up and making fake accounts. I don't know. I don't know who has all this time to do this stuff. It's ridiculous, right? Like I would never think of doing that. Even if I was mad, to put my energy away from what I'm trying to do that is like there's some wacky thing going on in people's heads.
I'd have to be really, really mad at a service that I've received so far that I don't want anyone else. I want to save other people from that horrible experience.
That would make sense. If you think this person is so bad and they're criminal almost, that people should know about it. Okay, fine. But if you're just pissed about something and then you put a bad thing and then they retaliate to you, and then, I mean, it's just not,
It's not use of time.
It's not worth it. Okay. So we've had a lot of good advice during our conversation. Are there other things that you want to share that you find that, that business owners should focus on when it comes to social media and their messaging and so forth, that you see consistently, like some advice and tidbits for people, or things that they should be careful of and avoid?
I mean, not not really anything other than what we've spoken about. It's just, I truly believe that your offer is like the most important thing when you're starting out, and like really getting that watertight, and making sales organically before you start looking at ads or anything like that, because that is one of the biggest mistakes I see people making.
Just
is that
throw
they
money into advertising, and next thing you know, they got no business.
Yeah, so you're going to burn through a lot of cash, and if your offer like fundamentally isn't good and it's not rock solid, then any money you throw at ads,
Wasting your money.
Yeah. So if you can prove the concept of, you have an offer, you've sold it to several people organically, you know, you've done all of that, then look at ads. But if you're just starting out, I think, yeah, going straight to ads is not a good idea.
Okay. So, and what's the best way for people if they want to learn about you, if they want to connect with you, interact with you? What's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Yeah, of course. So my YouTube channel is Ina Bakalova. I just have lots of like mini trainings on there.
Okay.
But also on Instagram and TikTok as well. You can just search me anywhere.
Okay. We'll put some links in the show notes for them to follow.
Yes, and I reply to all DMs on Instagram. So please, if you have any questions, then reach out.
All right. Well, I thank you. What time is it there? It's like 5 o'clock?
4 p.m. 4
p.m. Okay. It's almost 11 here. So I thank you for joining me from the UK. This is an international episode. And please, let's stay in touch. I always love to hear stories about success stories and everything.
Oh, no. Thank you for having me on. It was good fun.